Welcome to the Cake Therapy Podcast, a slice of joy and healing with your host, Dr. Altricia Foster.
Okay, good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cake Therapy Podcast, your slice of joy and healing. And as usual, we always bring gifts to you. We bring people who can provide gems from all across the United States and the world. And today's conversation is not any different. Today, we're joined by Dr. Benjamin Miller. Um, Interestingly, Dr. Benjamin Miller is a partner with my husband at the University of Minnesota, and he loves to bake. So not only are we bringing you bakers and people who own bakeries, we're bringing conversations from physicians and other professionals who bake. So Dr. Benjamin Miller is an
Mhm.
associate professor of neurocritical care, division director there. He is the service line lead and division head of neurocritical care at Health Fairview and the University of Minnesota School of Medicine. That's a lot. He's,
Yeah.
welcome, Ben.
Hi. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. I'm excited to have you. We talk, you and I are great friends,
Yeah.
disclaimer. And we always have these great uplifting conversations. But today I'm going to be a little nosier. Is that
Oh,
okay?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's do
I
this.
want to be I want to be poking around like you poke around in the heads of those
Oh,
patients.
yeah. No, you're going to be a little, yeah. Let's go.
I know. For those of you who aren't watching us on YouTube, Dr. Miller is wearing his scrub at the moment. He has a face mask under his neck. He's got his pager hanging. So he's currently at work, guys. So we
Mhm.
appreciate him for coming. How are you doing though? How's work going?
Well, my other partner gave me a nice long list to deal with on my day one. This is my day one.
Yeah.
So, just trying to play catch up and good old time. I like it
Yeah.
busy
Good.
though.
I know you do like it busy. Tell me why.
Uh, Adrenaline junkie? I don't know. I mean, I like keeping busy. I like complex things. I mean, I do neurology. I went into it because a lot of times there is no good answer, and it's fun to like figure out a puzzle. And
Mm-hmm.
I like my unit to be busy, and it's a delicate thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Because like for me, people to see me, they have to have the worst day of their life,
Mm-hmm.
and so me wishing busy is never good. So I've started to frame it like if something bad has to happen to someone, why can't they come to my ICU? And
Absolutely.
and even that sounds probably bad.
Yeah, problematic.
Uh anyway. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I like to keep busy and it's invigorating. And then
Yeah.
I get to actually teach and talk, and my residents really don't like it when I teach and talk because I tend to talk a lot. And
Mhm.
I tend to talk most at like 2 a.m. when they call me, and they really don't like it then.
I know. I hear that you get to work really early.
Hmm.
Is it that you want is like are you like the early bird catches the worm, or do you just like to start earlier in the day? Like what's that?
I'm just really slow. So it's more of a uh, vestigial, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
feature of residency and fellowship because, like, starting off as a baby intern, nurses rule the world, and everyone knows that. So, like in an ICU, it's their unit, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't like to be bugged at like 7:30 when they're trying to get their day started. They don't want to be bugged at 7 when they're trying to do handoff. 6:30, the night people don't want to be bugged because they're just trying to get through the night. 6 o'clock was neurosurgery round, so it became 5:30 to talk to the night people, which became 5, which became 4:30. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's just been kind of residual ever since. And it allows me to interface across night shift and day shift, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to play telephone. I hate telephone. I want to hear it from the person who's going to tell me it. So plus it's also I know if the residents are lying or not on rounds because I already know the story.
there's a method to your madness. So what's interesting about you is that you seem unassuming upon first meeting you, right?
Hmm.
But so tell me, what was your upbringing like? I know you were born in Iowa, is that
Hmm.
correct? All
Yeah.
right, tell me about, about early life, early
All right.
man, young man.
Early me. All right. All right. Let's see. Born in Iowa, grew up on a farm, Northeast Iowa, went to Green, Iowa, Green High School before it combined with other high schools. Had a class of 36, all of us going through kindergarten through senior year. One or two would come and go, but we known each other all through.
Mm-hmm.
Small town Iowa means everybody knows everything else going on, but also small town Iowa means, you know, you did everything, right? So, you go through elementary school, et cetera, and then you go to the big building, and then, there's all the sports to play, right? So I played in junior high. I was, football, I was wrestling. What did I do? I did track for a while. I'm very fast over short distances.
Yeah.
No, it's true. They put me in the 4x1 in junior
Mm-hmm.
high because I can sprint, and that's pretty much it. And then I played golf in high school because I just wanted to be outside and play golf in the spring. And then I lifted weights in the winter and played football and played in the band. I was a tenor sax player. And then we also in fall play. And then I also did speech contest and, you know.
Yeah, you did a lot. So you were one of those busybodies in high school.
Well, it was mainly the school was boring, right? Like,
Yeah.
you do the work and you aren't challenged that much. I took a lot of shop in high school, and
Mm-hmm.
much to the detriment of my GPA, because I could never get an A in shop for the life of me. I don't know what it was. The shop teacher was the football coach, and he had it out for me. It was all right.
Okay. Yeah, it's all right. Look
Yeah.
at you now. So tell me
Yeah.
about life on the farm.
Hmm.
Tell me, um, like an 8-hour day.
Eight
What
hour
was that
day.
like? Yeah.
What? There's no 8 hours on the farm. On the
Mhm.
farm, so I grew up with it was corn and beans, no animals, so it was all grain. But growing up, on the weekends we would kind of go over to my grandma's house, and I don't know
Mhm.
what it was. It was I'd spend pretty much all day Saturday there.
Okay.
Then when you got older, you get to go outside again and start helping. So,
Mhm.
and all through high school, every weekend it was go out and pull fence line. So we would
Mhm.
roll barbed wire, roll woven wire, clear fence line, cut trees, always
Yeah.
outside doing things. But yeah.
But it sounds like there's never a moment that in high school that you
Mhm,
weren't working,
mhm.
and similarly on the farm.
Yeah.
Did you always know that you loved science and you wanted to kind of pursue this career as a physician?
No. Um, so in high school, like I say, not a lot was challenging per se.
Mhm.
Not to sound conceited, it was just kind of a consequence of being in a small town and you have to teach to the class that you're given.
Mhm.
Um, and we didn't have like AP credits or a thing, apparently. I
Okay. Mhm.
didn't know what AP was till I went to college. But the thing had a PSEO, post-secondary enrollment option, right, through the local community
Mhm.
college. And so I was like, all right, let's do it. And it was general psychology, just a psych 101 type stuff.
Mhm.
And that was the most interesting thing that I think I'd done all through high school. And I was like, this is fascinating stuff. So I was like, all right, let's
Mhm.
do this. And, coming from small town Iowa, everyone knew everything about you, right? They knew all your business. They knew everything. They knew your
Yeah.
parents. They knew everything. Like, oh, what'd you do
Mm.
last weekend? Oh, don't tell me. I know where you were.
Uh-oh.
So, so I wanted to go to a larger university where you became a number essentially, where you could
Mhm.
blend in and go find whatever you wanted. So that's why I ended up University of Iowa. And yeah, like one of my first bio classes, etc., there was 500 some people in that lecture hall, right? That's half my
Mhm.
hometown. I come from a town of 1,000 people, so like got that many people in one spot. man, that was something else. And I went as a psych major because I did psych in high school, and I thought, oh, this is so cool. I only know one thing. My cousin was a
Mhm.
psych major, and everyone's talking about him being a psych major being so cool. So I did that, and turns out I hate statistics, and turns out psych is a lot of statistics.
Mhm.
And I took all the psych classes, etc. But like the hard science stuff, in the dorm room, I remember this. Uh, one of my friends was on a floor up there, and there was another guy up there, and he was loud, a force of nature, etc. He says, "I'm going to be an anesthesiologist." I was like, "You can just say that? You can't? No, that's not a thing. That's not a thing you do, right?" Because, you know, um, I think only my aunt on my dad's side did like 2-year community college or something. Other than that, there wasn't a lot of college in my family, right?
Mhm.
So I was like, you can do that? All right, let's go. The corollary to that was, when I got to the university, I don't know if you know University of Iowa or not, it's a huge university-owned hospital up on the hill, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just would walk through there, and I wanted a badge. That's literally why I got a job there, was I wanted to have one of these silly little hospital badges to walk around. So then I found a job as I don't know, student in critical pulmonary. Yeah, where we did
Mhm.
Persian Gulf War syndrome. And I didn't know what that was. And I made friends with respiratory therapists, and it was a whole thing. It was great. But it was never seen as like a job. It was just like, it was a job, and never I was going to go into it. Right.
Mhm.
I interfaced with the stuffy doctors, and, they had this aura about them that I didn't vibe with. And yeah, but then my, well, now friend, I guess, was like, "I'm going to be an anesthesiologist." I said, "What's that?" I said, "That
Mhm.
sounds fun." So I went and, went to a pre-med advisor one time, and they looked at me and they said, "You know what? Have you considered pharmacy?" And I went, "No." And that was the last time I ever saw them. So I was like, let's go do this. Let's go do this science. Let's go do this doctor thing, because I got nowhere else to be. And the psych major was losing its shine, I think,
Mhm.
because the experimental side of it felt very squishy.
Okay.
Um, and I wanted something a little bit more firm, a little bit more hard and fast, definite type thing where you
Mhm.
ask a question, answer a question.
Mhm.
And medicine felt like it. But so I became a bio major on top of my psych major. And then
Yeah.
one day this friend was like, "We need to go be biochem majors." And I'm like, "What's biochemistry? I don't know this stuff. I don't know this stuff." Right. So we go, and I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, it's a smaller department. You get better letters for your med school application." I was like, "That's genius." So flipped it, became biochem majors. Um, I was working in the hospital then, but then I flipped it, and then I got a um, student research assistant job in a biochem lab, because why not? Um, so I made that a job for a while and became a biochem major, and did the whole MCAT thing, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And then neither of us got in the first time. We both applied, and neither of us got in. And we're like,
Mhm.
well, that didn't work. Um, So I stayed on for a victory lap, and I added a microbiology major in that year, and picked up a chem minor just by virtue of biochem being so close, but it was PChem.
Mm.
That
Oh.
was the worst semester of my life.
Yeah, I don't like chemistry either.
Oh, I mean, I like chemistry. I love organic chemistry is my jam, right? It is Legos. It is
Mhm.
Legos with molecules, because if you know how things work, you can build whatever you want. And
Mm.
it was fun once you knew how the pieces worked. And you
Good
could
luck
build and
with
build and
that.
build. It was my only A plus in college, right? So it was just like, oh, let's go. It was fun. Um, but yeah, so I added microbio. I was doing molecular biology research in a lab at that point, and having the fun with the pipetting and cell culturing and living a great life. Then got into med
Mhm.
school, and
Yeah.
my friend didn't get into med school. So I
Did
got
he
in.
eventually? So he
He did.
didn't.
He did the following year,
Okay. Okay.
but he
That's
didn't go to
good.
Iowa. He ended up at
Oh,
DMU. So he went for
okay.
a DO program down there. But
Okay, perfect. So while you were doing all of that, right?
Mhm.
Did you have a modality of artistic expression? Like, were you doing any cooking, baking? Like, what were you doing?
um,
Or were you doing
so
anything? Yeah.
you know, back up to the farm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I told you on Saturdays I was with my grandma, right? I don't know how many Saturdays in a row, how many years, right? So I have the most vivid memories of being with her in that kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And, grandmas are, she never said no, right? I remember going through the pots and pans. I remember going through that cupboard. I just imagine like
Mm-hmm.
what she was feeling. Cause what I feel now when the kids do it, uh-uh, right? But she was great. And then she was always making something, right? Because in the morning, I mean, you had breakfast, right? But then you had lunch. But this was, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
eventually it's like Hobbit meals, right? You have breakfast and second breakfast and elevensies and a luncheon. And then, it's that idea, right? It's always,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of intermediate thing. So she was always baking something to have at that point in time. And whether it be cookies, cakes, pies, whatever, it was always
Mm-hmm.
sweet, never savory. So we were never bread people. It was always,
Yeah.
the not patisserie, now that I know that word.
Mm-hmm.
But just stuff that her mom had cooked, her grandma had cooked. It was family tradition, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just something you did. If you wanted something baked, you made it. It wasn't like you bought it. So
Mm-hmm.
with that, it's always just been a part of who I am and what I do. So superimposed on all this, it was like, I want cookies, so I made cookies. I want a cake, I made a cake, right? It was never something extra. It was always just
Mm-hmm.
me, and always just what I did and what I do and what I still do, right?
Yeah.
Which blows my wife away every time. She's like, "Who does this? Who just like is like just I'm gonna make a cake today. Who does that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna make a pie. I'm gonna make, I just made what? I made banana bread last night. It's basically by memory by now,
Mm-hmm.
just because, I tend to buy way too many bananas and I
Right.
just whip it
So
up.
the thing about it is, I'm not amazed at the concept or the idea that there's a physician who actually bakes. Because there are attorneys who bakes, and it's not unheard of. Because like
Mhm.
a lot of people who show up, who are guests on our podcast, they have held conventional careers, and
Mhm.
they've found solace in the kitchen.
Mhm.
And you speak of you're discovering your love for baking because your grandmother
Mhm.
taught you how to bake.
Mhm.
Is it then you say your wife tells ask questions
Yeah.
like, who does that? And
Yeah.
you make amazing desserts. You
Mhm.
do. They taste good, they look good.
Mhm.
And I often wonder, like, I know that when my husband comes home from like a stressful day, he
Yeah.
has his own way of escaping what he's facing
Mhm.
at work.
Mhm.
So, how do you escape the realities of being this neurointensivist in a field that is both demanding, both physically and emotionally?
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
baking your form of creative expression or stress relief when you do it? Do you feel like you're relieving stress when you're baking at home like crazy?
Mhm. You know, COVID did it, honestly. I mean, there was, no loss of people who was trying baking for the first time, right? Like the stories making their sourdough
Mhm,
starters, making whatever. And honestly, King Arthur Baking, the website, has
mhm,
become just my go-to for everything now. And so like recipe of the year, and I was looking at it, I was like, who makes that? Who can do
yeah,
that? Well, when you're sitting around your house all day staring at each other and just kind of like, what are you going to do with time? and it kept the kids busy too, right? So if they want to punch,
Mhm.
if they can get them up and punch some dough, right? You're gonna need, have at it, right?
Mhm.
Gonna stir, let's stir, right? And now apparently I've been doing it a lot because my youngest, every time he sees me in the kitchen with a whisk or whatever, you just hear this like stir, stir, stir. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. So, you get down,
Yeah.
you set it on the little stool there, and you just let him go to town, and then you clean up the mess after.
Yeah.
You end up with half in the bowl you started with, so you kind of plan for it.
Mhm.
But so apparently it's rubbing off on him because my wife sent me a picture the other day. They go to the library, right? And they have these play kitchens. Well,
Mhm.
he pulled out every pan on there and he was stirring on everything. He was cooking on everything. He was having just a great old time. And then the only thing she said in the text underneath was, he cooks just like you do, period. He uses every pan in the kitchen. And that's not a lie. That's not a lie. The it piles up. And so I'm
Yeah.
getting better at doing dishes as I go, but if I'm just making, it's out of hand, but yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. How do you feel then that when you see that this is the impact that
Mhm.
you're having on your kids? Are you Tell me the feeling of watching your kid gravitate towards the kitchen like you have.
Well, after I get over the initial terror of him grabbing at the mixer, and then just being like, "Okay, stop," and then watching him go, it's fun because you get to see growth,
Yeah.
right? Like, you teach for the first time, like, "This is how we do it," et cetera, and next time, there's a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, and
Mhm.
I hope that it's teaching a skill and
Yeah.
that it's not just something to do because they see me doing it so much as
Mhm.
I want them to see how it's incorporated into daily life
Yeah. Yeah.
and how it's just a natural thing to do. And it's not a
Mhm.
special thing. It's not a, this is what we do only on Saturdays thing or
Yeah.
whatever, but it's just kind of part of your day, right? Where you make up your mind to do something and you do it. And, I make sure to tell them, like, this is a new recipe. I don't know what's going on. You want to play? And then they come up. Um, but what really made baking more interesting, I guess, to me
Mhm.
is when I started discovering weighing everything, right? So
Okay.
going all through like college and all this, I would always use cup measures, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I still use teaspoons, etc. But like weight-based flour, turns out you can standardize everything real easy with that and you create a consistent product. I was like, that's a miracle, right? So I started converting my grandma's recipes into weight-based cooking, and she made a cookbook. So I have a cookbook with all her recipes, etc. And in the family, it's known as like our little Bible of cooking.
Yeah.
Like you just pull up Mimi's recipes, and I converted her angel food cake into a weight based, and now it's pretty consistent. And then
Mhm.
those molasses cookies that you like, yeah,
That I
um,
love.
mhm. Th- they never came out, right?
Mhm.
And I asked her one day when I started, I don't know, a few years ago, etc. I said, "Why isn't this working? They always come out flat or whatever." And she said, "Well, you got to pack the flour." I was like, "You." I remember I remember every Saturday watching you take that cup measure and you would lift that flour in that bucket, right? And you're fluffing it because it's too compact or whatever. And this was residual from her time of when they didn't have pre-sifted flour,
Mhm.
right? So she would like lift the flour up and put it over there. And I remember her like leveling it with a knife and all that. And turns out this recipe was built on before pre-sifted flour. And so she's like, "Yeah, no, you got to pack it a little bit so it's a little heavier." I was like, "That's not in the cookbook. What?" So I don't know how many recipes I did, but increasing the weight, and then
Yeah.
they'd come out flat. They're supposed to be cracked on top. The molasses
Yeah.
cookies, the spice molasses, anyway, supposed to be cracked on top, and they wouldn't. She's like, "Oh well, it's like a third Crisco, two-thirds butter." I'm like, you have butter only in this recipe too. When are you going to start? It's like, well, I can't tell you everything. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, all right.
Yeah, that's the secret sauce, man.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I bake, I've talked about it. It's like there's a therapeutic aspect to baking for
Mm-hmm.
me. It gives me
Mm-hmm.
all the feels, man. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I could be going through tons of stuff, and it's what I go to. I don't do talk therapy, but I do have stress and trauma.
Yeah.
And baking is it for me. It's not just a skill. So I have to ask,
Yeah.
do you experience any therapeutic feelings from baking, or is it just a thing to do?
No, no. You know, my memory is pretty garbage. I don't know. Like I told you about football, I got hit in the head a lot. I got concussed a lot. I don't remember anything. And when I bake, it brings back those memories, right? Like, so those cookies that I make for you that you like, those were a staple.
Mm,
And like my grandpa wanted them basically charred. Like they wanted them rock hard because they would have it with coffee, right?
mhm,
You come in for morning lunch or whatever, you'd have these cookies and with coffee and you just dunk them, right? If they were too soft, they'd fall apart, right? Um, and I can and growing up on the farm, like the place you sit's around the table. You don't sit in the living room. You don't sit in whatever. You sit in the table at the table, and they're always round
mhm,
tables in my family. They're always a round pedestal table. You always sit at the table with your coffee in it, and you have people come over, they visit, they come to the kitchen, and there's always
mhm.
something baked come out.
Yeah,
So this is my version of reaching back and connecting with a different time. So
yeah,
like I go like, you have a rough week, right? And, like you say, your husband has his method of coping and getting through his week, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes after my week, yeah, the next day is a bake day. I
yeah.
just, I need to go to, a different place, a different time. And it's not therapeutic per se with respect to the motion so much as the connection with the past, connection with the feeling associated with that past that's just different than what you're feeling in that moment, right?
Mhm.
And you hope too that you can provide a link to your kids to a moment in
Yeah.
time that they can carry forward, and that when they make cookies too or make pie or cake or whatever,
Mhm.
they can say, oh yeah, no, this was a good time because of X, Y, and Z. So like I don't I don't buy cake for people's birthdays, right? You make a cake for people's birthdays.
Yeah.
And baking was always like the expression, the feeling that that's how you showed emotion to for others,
Mhm.
right? That's how you expressed caring. That's how it's from the stoic Iowa farm family, right? Where you're just kind
Yeah.
of, the goal is suppress and file away.
Mhm.
So, there's no overt emotion, there's no outside anything. But what was interesting is that I saw this thing before about this woman talking about how their parents really didn't, always say, I love you, et cetera, et cetera. But
Mhm.
she saw when her mom, it was a Korean family, made fresh kimchi for her brother who was moving off. And they realized that that's like their way of emotion, their way of showing love. And it's, looking back, it's always like you had a fresh cake for your birthday, right?
Mhm.
Angel food cake every birthday. It's standard issue. It's family known. It's like
Mhm.
you got a birthday coming up, you got an angel food cake in your future.
Yeah.
And it was homemade, right? It takes
Mhm.
13, 14 egg whites. And before mixers, it took a strong right arm.
Yeah.
And, that's just birthday. And now my kids, who hate chocolate, by the way, don't know why. So I had to come up with different cakes for their birthdays. So they get a lemon chiffon cake on their birthday. Don't ask why, but they get a lemon chiffon. I tried, lemon pound cake, lemon whatever, but they want that
Mhm.
citrus. So
So,
yeah.
so so do you feel like it sounds to me that you're chasing with your baking simpler times, quieter times, times, to kind of center yourself. But I know how crazy this schedule of yours is.
Mm-hmm.
And you're telling me about pulling all the pots and pans out of the cupboard. When do you find time to do all of this, man? Seriously. When?
Well, I make usually I make supper at night when
Hmm.
I get home, and supper's another central meal where everyone gets around that table, and you just need to sit down. Everybody in the family sits down around the table, and again, I have a round table too because that's just what I need.
Hmm.
And everyone sits down for that one meal a day, at least has that time together. And it's not baking, but when I'm cooking, everything gets dirty because I'm very inefficient and scatterbrained on a lot of things. So I'm like, when I'm baking, I'm like, I have one bowl of weighed flour all ready to go, and I got my wet stuff going. I got my, blah blah blah. And that's where
Hmm.
they start piling up.
Yeah.
But when I find time for it, I find time when I have time. It's intentional, right?
Hmm.
It's like I say, it's not an afterthought for me, right? It's just who I am and what I do. So,
Hmm.
and it's not typical for most, right? I know because people come to baking at their own time,
Yeah.
right? And you come to this when you need it. And for me, it's like I feel like cookies today. I feel like chocolate chip cookies. Throw them together,
Yeah.
right? I can't have peanut butter in my house because of allergy, but it'd be peanut butter. Love to.
You say you don't want to kill anyone. So in our society, we tend to encourage our children, to do conventional degrees and to pursue conventional careers. To some of the young individuals who are listening to our podcast, what would be your central message to them who want to do both science and the culinary arts?
I'd say, what's the difference? Because, you know, science, the chemistry of baking is insane, right? So,
Hmm.
you know, it's like, honestly, I refer back to like when I'm in the unit, right, on the ICU,
Yeah.
and people ask me like, how do you do this? I say, well, this is baking and that's cooking, right?
Hmm.
And in baking, for me, I say that because of how precise it needs to be. Otherwise, you watch things fall, you watch things burn, you do all that, right? And
Yeah.
cooking's like that little whatever you add, that little special something, a little bit of spice,
Hmm.
a little bit of whatever, making it taste good on the fly. Baking, it's one shot, right? You put it in the oven and what comes out is what's going to come out. You don't get a chance to fix it in the oven
Hmm.
like you fix it on top of the stove. So
Yeah.
science is baking, baking is science, and
Hmm.
they mesh so well. So it's because one of my other friends who is a literal rocket scientist, we talk baking all the time too, and he's like, oh yeah, once I got the percentage, because he thinks about it in an entirely engineer way. He's like, yeah, the
Yeah.
percent hydration of the flour on this particular dough, once you figure out that, it's pretty easy. And I was just like, what? You're literally graphing this at home right now, aren't you? He's like, yeah, yeah, pizza ovens
Wow.
and whatever type of bread you're gonna make. It's
Yeah.
just like, you can you can experiment in baking just like you experiment in science, right? Like
Hmm.
my hours in my micro lab, trying to get some PCR, trying to get some gel to run, trying to get that Western, et cetera, et cetera. In some ways, that was cooking,
Hmm.
right? Like there's the baking part with respect to, pipetting your stuff, et cetera. But, you know, you got to hit the bench just right, or like shake the power supply, et cetera. Those little
Yeah.
things that aren't in your protocol, not on the
Hmm.
recipe per se, but that's what makes it cooking. They essentially
Yeah.
pack.
That's definitely what makes it cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like you to talk to or speak to young scientists. I want you to answer this question as, frame it in a word, in a way to kind of advise young scientists, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I talk about how important and demanding your job is.
Hmm.
It has a tendency to make it often, to make it be all encompassing, right?
Hmm.
It's all you do. How important is it for you to make your life more than your work? Like saying yes to being on this podcast,
Hmm.
right? And exploring your creative side through baking.
Yeah.
Speak to a young scientist here.
Find what you love and run with it, right? Like, don't let others tell you what you need to be. The part I left out about the med school part, the reason I did it is because my friends were doing it. Like, I never thought to do medicine. And that's not a way to get into something, right? That's a way
Mhm,
to immediately look back and say, what did I do? How did I get here? And that was actually my day one of med school, right?
mhm.
Like, I walk in and I'm surrounded by people that love to be here, right? This is their life's ambition. And I'm like, I did it because friends were doing it. Now I'm here. And what do I do with this? So, my suggestion to them is don't do something because others are doing it. Do it because you want to do it for yourself. You find it interesting. Always chase that, right? You have an interest, chase it, go after it, right?
Mhm.
There's always a way to do it. Um, YouTube. YouTube has created a false sense of ability for me, and my wife will agree. But
Mhm.
like, I love building stuff too, right? Because if you want to learn to do it, you can now. Advent of
Yeah.
all the technology and everything out there. Um, it's cliche, right? Like,
Mhm.
chase your dream, chase your
Yeah.
dreams. I'll tell you what, if someone would have told me that in high school, I would have told them where to go
Yes.
because, you know, it's hard to break free from the traditional mindset
Mhm.
and the stigma too. You're dealt with respect to, like, oh, he went to vocational school, like, I look back now, I'm like, I wish I could weld,
Yeah.
like, you look at the plumbers, you look at these plumbers going through, they're like, the creativity and et cetera that go along with it. Like, if you like to build stuff, go build stuff, right?
Mhm.
Don't feel like you need to go sit in some lecture hall about, some sociological, psychological, whatever, because that's
Yeah.
what you're told is normal. That's what you're told
Mhm.
to do. Um, and I'm hoping that the push forward is that a skill-based education is as valued, if not more valued, than a traditional route of going through college. Like, how many people who graduated a 4-year degree and ain't using what they studied for, right?
Yeah.
And is that what you wanted, or is that what you're told or expected to do? And
Absolutely.
that takes bravery, that takes ambition, that takes a willingness to go into the unknown and buck the trend. It's just like,
Yeah. It's almost like be brave and go for it. Like
mhm.
chase what you feel, like what feels right to you or what you connect with.
And find
Like,
your tribe, right?
yeah.
Like, you need to find like-minded people who also want to do this, and
Mhm.
surround yourself with those that are encouraging. Surround yourself with the positive people, not those who tell you no, but tell you, why not?
Yeah.
Not the why, but why not? That would have been so
Why
to
not?
say, but whatever. Um, it's and even if it's a person not in a field, right?
Mhm.
And for the longest time, I have no idea, and I still barely do, what the idea of a mentor is, right? And so
Mhm.
I read stories, when they pop up on the news feeds, like this mentor, et cetera, et cetera. So I read it and try to get a feel for what it was. And what it is not a mentor in the field that you want to be, but a person who can help you navigate um, your decisions, navigate
Yeah.
your thought process. And, they are they used to assign me mentees in the
Mm-hmm.
department. They got wise and don't do that anymore. But mainly because I'm a little too blunt. I'm a blunt instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And but I know everybody doesn't want to do what I do. And the way I go about it, I know is not healthy. And
Yeah.
that's all right. But it's taken me a while to set back and realize that others are going to go their own way, and you're either going to help them or hinder them, and you can be a helper. And that's like the Mr. Rogers, right? Look for the helpers.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to be. You need to be a helper and facilitate and, connect the people, connect the dots, use your knowledge and ability to help
Mm-hmm.
people navigate a system that you had to fight through. Why do you feel like others need to have the same fight that you had
Mm-hmm.
when you know the way through?
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm seeing mentoring as being now, is like just helping people navigate the labyrinth.
Yeah. Do you have the desire to be a mentor? And what do you see Ben's legacy as?
Oh my God. That's not a loaded question. So I will never tell a person to stop talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe you go out and say, I'm going to mentor you, right? That's paternalistic-esque, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're like, you're going to be my mentee. I will
Mm-hmm.
mold you. And it's not about that, right? It's not about molding somebody. It's not about anything. It's about
Right.
being that person to help them realize what they want to do. And legacy wise, that's the existential crisis question, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to leave behind? What impact are you going to have? Um, it it reminds me of, so I don't know, if you remember your husband when VA call in Cleveland, um, since we were
Mm-hmm.
also residents together. Um,
I know.
Home call VA, you had to drive in middle of the night if you got a call, go to the
Mm-hmm.
ER, right? And there was an ER doc there. And I don't know why he liked talking to me, but he always talked to me. And he said, we are just talking about life or etc. He says, in life, you can do three things, right? You can be, and this is medicine wise, but you can be well known, well published. You can
Mm-hmm.
be a good doctor and know your patients and they like you and you're good at what you do. Or you can, have a balanced family life and, everything's great at home. And
Mm-hmm.
he said to me, pick two. And I'm like, what? He said, you're only ever able to do two things well, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
try to do all three, you're going to fail at all three. And I thought about that. I mean, yeah, there's some people that are able to do all three, but looking around, it's the exception, not the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And, legacy wise, you have to really think, like, do you care, medicine wise, right? Do you care if you're known at the national level? Do you want people to associate your name always with what you did in a career, etc.? Or
Mm-hmm.
do you want to take care of the patients around you and then have your kids know your name, right? Like, if you're always going about and going to meeting after meeting and you're on conference after conference and, subcommittees of blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah, right?
Yeah.
You ain't home, you ain't present. And before kids, right? Before kids, it was name and work, name, work, name, work, name, work. Much to, the chagrin of my wife at home, right? Because I was
Mm-hmm.
doing 18-hour days in fellowship, and because that's where I felt at home. That's what I wanted to
Right.
do, and that's how I
Mm-hmm.
learned. But now you get kids home, and I'm getting home earlier than I ever did, right? Like, I make sure every day that I'm at the bus to pick him up, right? I
Yeah.
would try to pick him up pick the big one up from school, because in school now, I make in the morning now, instead of going straight to the hospital, I make them lunches in the morning every day. I try to, and like you asked me what I baked recently. I mean, so I baked the banana bread yesterday because I know that they like it and they can have it while I'm gone or for breakfast or whatever. But I also made them biscuits. I mean, they're frozen or whatever, but I baked them biscuits, and they like sausage biscuits in the morning. So I fried up some sausage patties, put them in the fridge. So now for the next 2 days, they have sausage biscuits for breakfast. It's good for them, but it also makes mornings smoother prior to getting on the bus. And like the national presence, the fall off, the committee this, committee that, it's not a target. It's not a goal, right? If it happens, it happens, right? But that's by no exertion per se, no focus on my own part, so much as like, hey, you're a part of this now, show up to a meeting, etc. I said, fine, it's all right. I'm not pursuing it, right? Like, come what may, fine. But I'm going to show up for my patients in the morning. I'm going to round on them. I'm going to do the best I can with what I got. And I'm going to come home at night earlier than I usually do.
Yeah. Kudos to you for being so intentional about that. It takes effort to be able to be present for your children in this field that you guys work. And I admire that, about you. I have to say, Ben, that there's never been a moment that I have personally called you to serve with me where you've said no. Okay? It's never a no. And I am extremely proud to tell our listeners that you are one of our board of directors on the Cake Therapy Foundation. How do you feel about this work that we're doing with women and girls who are impacted by the systems? How do you feel about your participation in this work and the importance of it?
Yeah. You always feel like you don't give back enough, right? And you impact, I mean, like the people I see, I'm an adult neurointensivist, right? I see the oldest people, whatever, and you can't really have an impact. You navigate families through it, but can you impact earlier? Can you do more sooner, and such that maybe people aren't in the position that they find themselves in down the road, right? Give them an off ramp that they may not have otherwise.
Yeah.
Or be able to see. Maybe there is an off ramp for them, but you can just point a light at it. And first off, I'll never say no to you, Trisha. I mean, that's just the way it is. But you're your own force of nature, and you can't say no to a hurricane. So, but also, like, the vision is sound, right? It's not pie in the sky. It's not, Pollyanna-ish. It's, practical. It's identified a problem, identified a possible solution offer. And, I know what baking does for me, right? It provides a safe space. It provides an escape, right? And if you're able to tie making something to a better time, right? And then in the future, it's a skill, number one. But number two, it falls back and triggers one of them memories, right?
Yeah.
It triggers a place where, you can go to and remind yourself that the present wasn't always the present, right? And that this too shall pass, and you just have to get through it through all any means necessary. And if that's, escapism or whatever you want to call it, but it's a way to cope with situations that you find yourself and makes things less overwhelming, right? I still see the farm on Saturday, right? And that's my happy place. It's where I'm comfy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So before we go, I would like for you to share with our listeners your favorite thing to bake. I know you bake a lot, but what is your favorite thing to bake? And would you share that recipe with us so we can post it? I mean, post your episode. Talk to us. Talk to the people.
You know, secret sauce, man. Um, so uh, really in med school, there was a bunch of us, and most of my friends are not in medicine. Okay, I don't like the idea of an echo chamber, etc. But we would watch House and Grey's Anatomy on the weekends. It was, appointment TV. We didn't DVR or anything, right? Because I'm old. But
Mm-hmm.
I would make them creme brulee, and it was really an experiment. So I would show up to their house on that day, and I would make it fresh for that night right there. Is that what you're supposed to do? No, it's supposed to cool in the fridge, at least chill a little bit. But, you whip it up, make those egg whites, or make the egg yolks and sugar turn white, and then, you got cream going. You put the whole thing in the freezer and you hope it got cold enough. But you throw it in the bain marie and then you cook it till it wiggles a little bit, right? And it was my excuse to buy a blowtorch. Okay, let's just cut to the chase. I just wanted a blowtorch. And the only way I could do it is if I did this. So what was really nice and how it dovetailed into my past was that angel food cake, right? That takes 13, 14 egg white, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the recipe I use is measured in volume, which to no end goes all over me, but it's measured in volume, not in number of eggs. So you had like yolk on yolk. So I've been looking for recipes to use the yolks for. Well, creme brulee, right? So you make creme brulee when you make angel food cake, and you get this real, not heavy per se, but definitely indulgent, rich, crispy, burnt sugarish thing. And then you pair it next to it with this light angel food cake.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to think, but I know my everyday recipe, and I've already given you this recipe, Trisha, but
oh yeah, I have that. I'm gonna keep that one. That's
I know you got that
secret sauce.
Oh, you're gonna keep that?
Yeah.
All right, I won't give them that.
Oh, this is my secret sauce.
Fine.
No, I don't want that.
No molasses cookies for anyone else. I got you.
No.
But
no, I'm selfish.
I can since it was part of every birthday for me, I can give you the angel food cake recipe that I reverse engineered to make it into a weight-based recipe, such that it's pretty automatic-ish. The only cooking part of it is how much you beat the egg whites, because to make that meringue.
I'd like to let our listeners know that I have never had the creme brulee.
Oh, I mean,
never made that for me.
No, I mean, I don't make it. No, I don't make it. It's a story to tell. It's not real.
I've never had that one.
Okay, fine.
Dr. Miller, thank you so much. This has been a delightful conversation. Mm-hmm. Like this is our conversation. This is how we talk all the time. We will stand up in a room and
this was just a regular day.
I know. Oh my goodness.
People are gonna listen to it, I guess.
They will. So thank you so much. You bring value to the podcast. Good. And you bring value to my life. And I wanted to say thank you for taking the time out. I know your list is long, but you took the time to have this conversation with us. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being here.
Oh,
this has been the Cake Therapy Podcast. This has been a delightful conversation with Dr. Benjamin Miller. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cake Therapy Podcast. Your support means the world to us. Let us know what you thought about today's episode in the comment section. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you found the conversation helpful, please share it with a friend. Also, follow Sugar Spoon Desserts on all social media platforms. We invite you to support Cake Therapy and the work we do with our foundation by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description or by visiting the Cake Therapy website and making a donation. All your support will go towards the Cake Therapy Foundation and the work we are doing to help women and girls. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.